following participant has entered the conference.
NaCCRA.
The conference is now being recorded. The following participant has entered the conference.
Judy Moss.
The following participant has entered the conference.
John Dulcimer.
The following participant has entered the conference.
Bob Nicholson.
Good afternoon, everyone.
People, but not all people.
This is Pete Straub.
Hi, Pete. This is Dan. We're waiting yet for one or two more people, Gene Hurley and Joe Walton.
Well, I'm happy to sit and wait.
I didn't hear my name called, but I think I've been entered. This is Judy.
That's you, Judy. Yes,
Yeah.
you have been entered.
Thank you.
Are we also waiting for Marlene, Dan?
Yes, I think we're waiting. Yes, we are.
And Ruth Walsh.
I have regrets from Ruth Walsh.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
This is Bob Nicholson. I have got to be with.
Welcome, Joe. Bob, you were going to say something?
I was going to say that I need to be with the MD at Betty's bedside at 2 o'clock your time. So toward the end, I will trail off.
And this is John Dulcimer. I'm at a NaCCRA actually board meeting myself, but this is more important at the moment. But just if I need to leave at some point, just be aware that's the only reason I'm leaving.
Good. Thank you, John. We maybe should welcome Walt.
Thank you. I've been out of touch for about 3 weeks because my computers have been down, but I'm back up as of last night.
Nothing makes me more nervous when my computer fails to operate.
Yeah.
So we know what you've been through. I wonder, friends, if I should take the roll call and if we should proceed. Great. Welcome, Marlene. This is Dan. I'm just going to take the roll call and then we'll proceed. Walt Boyer?
Here.
Jack Cumming?
Here.
John Dulcimer?
Here.
Gene Hurley? I haven't heard from Gene yet. Judy Moss?
Here.
Bob Nicholson?
Here.
Dan Seeger is me. I'm here. Pete Straub?
Here.
Marlene Barner?
Here.
Ruth Walsh has sent her regrets. And Joe Walton?
Here.
So we're missing Gene Hurley, who I did expect to be on the call, but we do have a quorum, and I wonder if friends are comfortable if we proceed.
Yes.
Let's go ahead.
Having taken the role, I think what I suggest is that we will approve the minutes and then before we turn to the report of the treasurer, although we're mindful that John is under pressure, good legitimate pressure to leave, maybe before we do the report of the treasurer, we will give attention to 2 resignations, which I hope will not take us a huge amount of time so that we can turn to the report of the treasurer without keeping John from his other meeting. Is that agreeable as we proceed?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you've all received the minutes of October 18th. I don't believe, Jack, you've received any corrections?
Well, this is Pete. Let me offer a correction, and that is that I was present.
Ah.
Who did I not have present? Okay.
Welcome, Gene. This is Dan. We've already started the meeting, and we're just considering the minutes.
Thank you.
So we want to correct the minutes to note Pete Straub's presence. If there are no other corrections, I wonder if there's a motion to approve the minutes.
I make a motion that the minutes be approved. Joe Walton.
Second.
second it.
Who seconded the motion?
Jean.
Jean. Okay, Jean. All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are corrected. The minutes are accepted with the one correction that we've noted, and we'll now turn to. There are two resignations I think we want to think about briefly. You've all received the letter of resignation of Joe Walton, and we've also received a draft minute of appreciation or resolution of appreciation for Joe's service. I wonder, before we ask for the motion to be put on the table, if there are any comments that anyone wants to make or any thoughts that you want to share with us, Joe.
I just overwhelmed by that resolution. Leaves me speechless. Thank you. I'm going to miss all you guys. You've all enriched my life. I commented on that last Sunday at the Nashville meeting at luncheon get-together, and it's one of the big pluses of being affiliated with CCRC. And my world has been greatly enriched beyond Seabury by comments I've been able to make with state and the national. I'll miss you guys. Wish you well. We'll continue to support you in every way I can. Again, thank you for the resolution and the comments that some of you have sent to me.
Well, we'll miss you
Bob
too,
Mickelson.
Joe. Go ahead, Bob.
Bob Mickelson in Seattle. I've always appreciated Joe's wry humor. He always would say, well, Bob, all you need to get to the meeting is to bring us in 3 new life members, and that'll cover your expenses. And I've worked diligently to live up to his expectations. But also, we look forward to seeing Joe and a hefty delegation from Connecticut and from Seabury when we gather in Boston November 1 to 4. So, Joe, start planning on November 1 to 4 and getting the delegation up there, because you're still a resident leader, just not on the board.
God willing, the creeks don't rise. I'll see you all in Boston.
All right.
Is anyone prepared to put the draft resolution on the table?
Well, I'd like to move it.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay. So we have, who put it on the table? I didn't quite hear. I think Jack needs that for the minutes.
Yes.
No, he doesn't.
Jack, shall we assume that you put it on the table?
Okay. Yeah, I thought Jean, I have down that Jean moved. Was it Judy who seconded?
Yes.
Okay, so Jean and Judy, that sounds good. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Now, the bylaws say that the president can appoint a new member when a member resigns before his term is completed. The president requires the concurrence of the board to do so. I have in mind about 7 people who I think would be good board members. Only 4 of the 7 I have in mind are known to the rest of the board, so the 3 that are not known to the rest of the board, I will not discuss with you. I'll leave those for the nominating committee to explore in depth. The 4 that are known to all of you, the 4 that are known to all of you are
Dan, we don't have to spend time on this at this point.
Okay, John. Do friends agree that we should not consider filling the place right now?
Yep.
Fine. I'm assuming we should go ahead. And John, I didn't mean to delay unduly your need to withdraw.
That is not my concern. I guess I know what I put in the treasurer's report, and I think it's unnecessary to discuss that at this point.
Okay. Why don't we go ahead to the treasurer's report then? I'm perfectly glad to do that.
Well, and I will give.
John, walk us through it.
Good.
Thank you. John, please proceed.
Okay. I will answer the one question that I was asked by a board member, which there is, at this point, and I don't have anything from, or I don't have much from Nashville. There is one member of the board who has made a contribution this year. That was in the amount of $500. There are 6 board members who have not claimed reimbursement, and there are 7 board members who have claimed reimbursement, but that's not counting Nashville. But so just that was the one question that I've been asked by a board member, and so I thought I want to answer that. I have a treasurer's report. I will try to read it calmly and slowly. I've been on the NaCCRA board for only 7 months. I've attended 1 in-person meeting, and I think I've participated in most, if not all, of the teleconference meetings. I've tried to read all the emails. In the past, I have run 2 business corporations and started 4 not-for-profit organizations. In my judgment, NaCCRA is not in a bad financial condition. It is not good, but we can survive. Unfortunately, I think Charlie Paulk's email is basically correct. My own opinion, formed over the last 7 months, is that each member of the current board is a good, well-meaning person and deeply cares about NaCCRA. But NaCCRA has too many board members. We cannot afford 11 board members. Ideally, the board should consist of 5 people, maybe 7, and they must be people who can work. We do not have an executive director. Bennett's firm provides membership records, accounting, and lifeline distribution. We were paying Coburn $800 a month to do just membership. We are getting a bargain with Bennett for $1,000 a month. We cannot afford an executive director. The unfortunate fact is that we're not 40 years old. All our prospective members are over 62. The president of NaCCRA has to be the chief operating officer. She or he has to be the executive director. Each member of the board must perform some of the duties that a staff would do. Bennett's firm and Bennett, I think, are willing to help. We need to be realistic. To make NaCCRA a meaningful organization, and it is an important organization, NaCCRA needs 50 to 100,000 members. It can happen, and I think it can happen in 3 to 5 years. But we must recognize reality.
Comments? Bob Mickelson here. I second John's excellent report. I suggest we table replacing Joe Walton until the financial picture clears up and that we move toward the recommendations he's suggesting.
I further think that a lot of this has to be discussed in the bylaws committee.
My recommendation
and John is
a
member of the bylaws committee.
I would suggest it has to be discussed in the executive committee.
Yeah, my suggestion is that I move that John's report be referred to the executive committee for a response, and that if they could find a way to suspend the bylaws to present a new slimmed-down form of organization to meet the budget needs and the missional needs, that we do that.
I will send a copy of what I basically just read to all the board members, probably not till either Thursday night or Friday morning, because, as I said, I'm at a flexible board meeting.
Okay, well, I've heard 2 recommendations. One, that John's report be sort of woven into the bylaws revision process, and another recommendation that the officers the executive committee, which is really the officers, be charged with the job of trying to trim down operations immediately probably more immediately than the bylaws revision would allow, in some way that maybe would not violate the bylaws. I wonder if there's any more discussion.
Yeah, this Walboyer, I want to second the motion and put it with the executive committee, and if they find that they're unable to properly come to a resolution, then to refer it to with their recommendations to the bylaws.
This is Pete Straub. What's the purpose of the bylaws committee if the executive committee is going to supersede us?
Well, we may have to change our bylaws. Right now, I don't have them in front of me, but I don't know whether or not the executive committee can initiate this action on its own.
I believe I did read. They can, Walt. I'd read it, and they can.
Yeah. The executive committee can operate in lieu of the board, but must report any decisions made to the immediate next board meeting.
Okay, so they could take action on this.
Except I would suggest, and I am a member of the executive committee, that whatever the executive committee decides, that it be shared with the entire board, and so that the entire board accepts whatever that decision is.
Joe Walton here. I just want to comment that I think that Partners in Association Management, vast experience, particularly, is an excellent resource for the executive committee. Seek his input and guidance. If that's not already being done, I certainly urge that step be taken.
Friends, it seems to me that where we're going with this is that we want the executive committee to give immediate attention to a trimmed down way of moving forward, looking in the long run. Well, I'm considering John's recommendation that in the long run we need a smaller board of workers, of people who do what a staff would do. I think that we have to be honest and to operate with integrity. We have to be careful not to flagrantly violate the existing bylaws. I think that the sentiment of the board is that the officers who are the executive committee should take an immediate look at this, should see if they can devise a trimmed-down way of moving forward which do not violate the bylaws, and whose recommendation regarding this will be circulated to the full board, including the bylaws committee, because the bylaws committee can be advised of this new look as they consider their revision. Does that make sense to friends?
I accept that as a good summary.
Walpoyer, I agree too.
So the motion is to refer it to the executive committee to respond to the board with their recommendations after reviewing John's proposals.
And actually, 3 members of the board are on the bylaws committee, so that discussion can continue.
Yes.
In other words, 3 members of the officers are on the bylaws committee.
Yeah,
the executive committee. Yes.
Yeah, Judy's absolutely correct.
Right. So in a sense, it's not all that different. I think we should put this in a resolution. I don't know if the chair
I move that it be referred to the executive committee.
I have a resolution from Nicholson that was seconded by Boyer.
Right.
Okay. Could you read the resolution, Jack?
Nicholson suggests that the report of the treasurer to the executive committee to see if action.
Is there okay? The motion has been presented and seconded. Is there any discussion before I ask for a vote? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you very much, John. That was excellent work. John, do you have anything more to say about the Treasurer's report?
Not in detail. I mean, I've sent out the numbers. They're not now. As I said, we do not have reimbursement requests. I've gotten 2, I think, from the national meeting. I don't know if that will hit, obviously, sometime this month. If there are those requests, we're not as terrible. We're not bankrupt. And since I do feel that NaCCRA is important and it can survive, and to be very upfront about it, and I'm not quoting him, but I discussed this with Bennett. We are getting so much more out of Bennett Napier, and I think it's positive, I must admit, than what we're paying him. He is willing to work with us. We're a pimple on an elephant, but he understands that NaCCRA is important, and of course, as you know, he is, I think, very dedicated to FLICRA, and that carries over to NaCCRA. So he will do what he can to help us, and there are things he can do to help us. I think it was Bob Nicholson who said that, and I agree. May have been Joe Walton too, no. As I said, I just want to emphasize we're not bankrupt. And we can survive, but we need to go forward, and I feel, obviously, and it's my opinion, I feel we just have to look at the structure of the board and move forward.
Right. Certainly any interaction I've had with Bennett has been very, very helpful. He's been very, very helpful to me since I've been in office. I certainly have been John.
This is Bob Nicholson again. Bob Nicholson again.
Yes, go ahead, Bob.
3 things. What? 3
Go
things.
ahead, Bob.
One is, I heard the call. My contract to be on the board included bringing me from the West Coast to the meetings, and I've been appointed. Joe Walton has been so kind to point out that I'm probably the most expensive member of the board because I'm a retired press trade minister with a fixed income. But I have found a way in 2015, I think, to totally fund my participation. I can't promise that, but that's a hopeful sign. Another hopeful sign is the excellent lead article in the November Lifeline by Dan that ends with a careful description of the fact that we're a 99% volunteer operating on a shoestring, and people should do year-end tax planning and tax giving to NaCCRA. And so I hope that also. And 2 and 3, we've got 3 opportunities coming up. One is we've been asked by Brookdale CEO to address the board on affiliating with Brookdale, which could result in 10,000 new members, and we have an ongoing discussion with Leading Age. The Leading Age president of Kentucky said, we would like to find a way through Leading Age to affiliate with you where we could enroll members as a part of their residency in our facilities in Kentucky, which might be a pilot project. So there are things in the offing. I want to keep the bright horizon before us. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
This is Pete Straub. I think one of the things the executive committee ought to consider is removing the possibility of reimbursement at all. With the sad situation on the West Coast, but there'll be a meeting of Leading Age out there too. I just think we don't need to continue to pay board members.
This will result in several resignations, Pete. I think you need to go
very
slowly. That. Well, then,
until the executive committee meets and discuss it. And Pete, I got your memo, and it was an interesting memo. I think until the executive committee meets and discusses where we're going, I honestly think it's a premature discussion.
All I'm suggesting is that it be something to consider.
Well, I agree with you, and that's something. I have your memo, and it's something I've considered, and I'm sure the executive committee will.
Yes,
I would ask another consideration for the executive committee, please. The board that I have on all expect board members to make some cash contribution, and I think we should look for ways to encourage that, and I would like the committee to consider that.
Yes, sir.
I don't feel
Certainly
comfortable membership when the board isn't participating in giving?
Any board that I've served on, and I've served on many, expects 100% financial, contribution participation from board members.
Guys, we're drifting. This is not the time to discuss this issue.
Are there any other comments before we move on to the next item? Okay. Our next agenda item is the postmortem of the Nashville meeting.
No, we haven't dealt with Marlene's resignation.
Well, I thought people didn't want to.
That's pressing.
That was certainly on my mind. So if people are agreeable, we will discuss Marlene's resignation. I presume people know that Marlene has given us warning several months ago, and now in a letter to me, that she plans to resign from the editorship of Lifeline and to end her board service this coming summer. So we appreciate, again, Marlene has done 6 years. Am I correct, Marlene? 6 years of editing of Lifeline?
At the time I'm suggesting retirement.
And that's a huge amount of work for NaCCRA that Marlene has done. Very important work, as Bob has pointed out earlier. We also regret Marlene's resignation, but we appreciate the fantastic work she has done. And we appreciate especially the advance notice so that we can see to a successor as editor. Jean Hurley has let us all know that she is open to considering the idea of succeeding Marlene. Jean, I'm wondering if it makes sense to you if we hold off on making a decision of that sort just yet, because it might be wise to see if Marlene knows of people who might also be qualified to serve, so that we can save your energies for other work within the board if there is available other talent to edit the Lifeline. So I'm wondering if board members are comfortable with the idea of noting at this point Marlene's plan, and if the board would be comfortable if I consult with Marlene offline about people that she's been working with who might be qualified to serve as editor, and if I also consult offline with Jean, and if we come back sometime before Marlene departs with a proposal for you to approve for a new editor.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to move. That's an approach, but I'd like to put it in the record that we move that Marlene confer with the president and the executive committee on her experience with other persons that she feels suitable to be nominated as the Lifeline editor, and that report come to us. For example, I don't want to speak for Marlene, but Jennifer Young has made an exceptional contribution to Lifeline through the Ask and Share program. And there are people, and she's had several people doing proofreading, and I would like to have her lay that out for the president and the executive committee and let them mull it over and present us some options.
Okay. Bob, the first part of that was a motion, I believe.
Yeah, I move that Marlene confer with the president and the executive committee with her thoughts on succession.
Thank you. I second that.
Is there any discussion of the motion before I ask for a vote? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Thank you very much. That's good. Now we'll turn to the postmortem of the Nashville meeting.
Well, I think you've got me interrupting you every time, but we have a deadline of November 20 for a proposal for a leading age workshop, which I think supersedes this item. And if we don't get it in we miss a magnificent opportunity for member development and promoting the NaCCRA brand among leading-age providers. So I'm sorry to...
No, that's okay, Bob. That's perfectly in order. The agenda should be responsive to the needs of the members.
That's item number 10.
Yes. So shall we turn to item number 10? I guess we're looking for a board member who is willing to work on the proposal. The proposal is due on the 21st, so there isn't a lot of lead time. I don't.
Would it have more credibility if the proposal came from the president of the under and over the president's name, and that you take there have been 3 different options presented, and you pick what you think is the most attractive, run it by Catherine Pearson, who has made a proposal, and take it from there.
What is the proposal that Catherine Pearson has made? This is Jack.
Well, it was. I knew you'd ask. Everybody got the email, but it was a more user-friendly title that engaged resident best practices that will aid marketing and engaging the new generation, or something like that.
I tell you, I certainly agree that the proposal might come from the president. The problem is that the president is getting ready for a trip to Portland and Seattle, and there's no way I'm going to find any significant amount of time to work on this between now and the 21st, because I've deferred my preparations for Seattle and Portland till after the Nashville meetings, and I do have a lot of preparations to do since there are several different meetings.
I think the rest of what was said was that you should be the signature over the proposal, but not necessarily the preparer.
Yes. That's what I agree. Right. Yes.
I understand. This is Jack. Following the email discussion that's gone back and forth, I've noted, and referring to the previous item in which Dan alluded to Jean Hurley's willingness to contribute to NaCCRA on a more intense level, it occurs to me that she's attended probably more of these meetings with greater recall than anyone else, and that she has a considerable interest in this project. And I'm just wondering if Jean would be willing to take on the role of lead worker for the...
Well, also, she's a writer.
Pardon?
She's a writer.
She's a writer as well. Well, Jean, do you feel led to do this?
Well, I got the proposal, and I think it was prepared by Jack Cumming. I'm not sure, but it followed the guidelines that NaCCRA set forth. Okay, following those same guidelines and using what he proposed as a panel, I proposed as a networking opportunity, that rather than these people giving a panel presentation, that they meet in small groups and have a networking opportunity, and then maybe 2 networking opportunities per session. And the reason I say that is because in Nashville, I attended the networking opportunity on Sunday morning, and the people from Leading Age were there, and everybody was pleased with the way that it turned out. It gave everybody an opportunity not only to listen to other people, but also to share their own experiences. At the end of it, everybody, threw in passed out a copy of their calling cards. But that networking opportunity in Nashville was really a good workshop, and it was prepared by Leading Age and the Leadership Conference That is, people who are in the leadership organization. You know, they had meetings of that same group making future plans for future leadership. And, of course, the other networking opportunity that I found really most worthwhile, and this was in just one large group, and that was in Denver. And Leading Age also prepared that. But like I say, Jack Cumming prepared a panel, and that means, you know, it's just what you had this year in Nashville. People stand up and give a presentation, share their own expertise, and then you have opportunity for open questions. But it's not quite the same as networking, and that's my bias.
Jack,
this is Don. Okay, it's November 5th. The deadline apparently is November 21st. If Gene is willing to prepare a proposal, and if Dan's not available, I would say share it with Jack Cumming, and if they agree on the proposal, and as long as Dan is happy that Gene puts his name on the proposal, I think the motion that's at the bottom of agenda item number 10, I would make that as a motion.
Well, I would. This is Jack Cumming. I would support that. I wanted to ask Gene. I listened to what you said, and that's all very very appropriate. Was that your assent to take on the assignment?
Yeah, since I've already submitted, you know, pretty much what I have in mind. I've already.
So then you'll put it into the form that Leading Age requires.
Yeah, right. With your help.
So,
with the help.
Since Gene is willing, and if Jack is willing to review it, I make the motion. I don't need to read it because I assume you all have it in front of you. I'm making that as a motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second for Marlene.
Okay, Marlene seconds it. Is there any further discussion before I ask for a vote?
Well, this is Jean again, and you know, rather than just have a couple of us work on it, what I do is I send out my suggestions to everyone, so that you know, I feel like the more people that contribute ideas, the better product you get. And so I'm always asking for input, you know, making minor changes or major changes, and that's why I feel like, you know, everybody should know what we're thinking about. And take a look at it, and you know, and if you don't say anything, then you like what you see.
I was going to say, if you send it out, give us a deadline. But you're taking responsibility, and I gather Jack is willing to work on it with you, and so that's great. We thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
We do.
Right. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Great. The motion carries. The motion as written with the names of Gene Hurley and Jack Cumming inserted as appropriate. Good. Now, let's see if I can figure out where we are on our agenda. We're back now to number 4. Are we agreeable? I'm perfectly willing to accept, sort of rearrangements of the agenda if there's other things that are more pressing. But I'm going back to 4 now. If that's agreeable. Number 4 is a postmortem of the Nashville meeting. There's a list of questions there that the officers have prepared, and we don't have a proposed motion, but we're seeking reactions from board members.
Dan, this is Bob Nicholson. I've got to sign off, but I want to sign off with a comment on the Nashville meeting. Our panel went extremely well. The one problem that I have that I think we must fix in 2015 for Boston is to get nailed down the content of both the NaCCRA meeting, the resident luncheon meeting, and if we have a workshop that Gene Hurley's working on, so that it can appear in the Lifeline before that precedes the Boston meeting, and that we can begin to promote it, particularly among the New England CCRCs to come. We didn't know until the last minute what was going on at the luncheon, and we had such an outstanding panel, but that didn't get into Lifeline, and I made stuff up, and I mean, not made up, but I mean, I used what we knew to get out by email to several CCRCs. We failed miserably in getting CCRCs in the Nashville area to the meeting. We need to address that also in the Boston meeting. Those are my comments. Advanced planning into leading age and a more aggressive approach with the New England region. In fact, that could be Joe Walton's assignment to get all of New England to Boston.
Okay, thank you, Bob.
And I've got to sign off. I'm sorry. Got to go.
Thank you, Bob. Our best to you and Betty. Other comments about Nashville?
Yeah, just on the expenses, just as a matter of curiosity, did we rent the room that we met in the Omni Hotel?
No. Leading Age provided that for us.
Oh, okay, good. Oh, all right.
The other thing I would say is when registration period closes, we should make every effort to make sure we know the names and locations of all the residents who have registered to attend Leading Age.
I tried to do that, Marlene, but Leading Age's practice, and it's not an unusual practice, is that they will circulate things for us to the residents who have registered, but they will not give us a list of the residents who have registered.
Okay.
So as soon as they were prepared to give the notice out, the notice went out. But it went. They forwarded the motion. They forwarded the publicity to the residents. They did not give us a list of the residents.
But they did send out.
I tried to get it, but I couldn't.
Did they send out notices of our Sunday morning meeting to all the people who registered?
As far as I know,
a special notice?
As far as I know, they did. Yes.
But you don't have a copy of the notice they sent out?
Well, I got one, and you all got one. But the question is, I assume I was told by a very excellent staff member, Sharon Sullivan, was working with me. The only complaint I have about Sharon Sullivan is that she sort of disappeared from the landscape for about 6 weeks at a critical time. But when she was available, she was very excellent and very cooperative. And she told me that she sent the notice that you and I and everyone else on this board went to every registered resident.
Okay, good.
Dan, on the last question there that you raised, did the resident luncheon signal a deepening relationship between Leading Age and NaCCRA? I don't know. There are parts of that meeting that I felt that we were going further apart rather than finding common ground. That was my way. I think some of the questions that were directed to the speaker got us off on the wrong foot, but I think giving everybody an opportunity to comment sort of righted that. But I just left that luncheon with an uncomfortable feeling as to what was really accomplished and what if we were clear on what we wanted to accomplish at that luncheon meeting.
As you all recall, the previous meeting, which was in Dallas, when the luncheon came along, there was an odd vacuum where there was food, but there was no program.
Right. Yeah.
And therefore, I jumped to the conclusion that we should fill the vacuum with NaCCRA program. Unfortunately, Leading Age is sponsoring the luncheon, and they didn't like the program that we came up with. And so they invited the White House advisor instead. So somehow Leading Age's failure to manage the luncheon in Dallas led to kind of a misunderstanding on my part that we were in charge of the luncheon, which we were not. And so that was kind of difficult. So it was a little difficult, and the I think, Sharon Sullivan probably next year, in Boston, I expect that if we can come up with a proposal for a luncheon program that is acceptable to Leading Age, I suspect that Sharon Sullivan will be grateful and will adopt it. But we have to do it early, and we have to be careful that it has a not-for-profit look. I know this is a sore point with some of us, but Leading Age wants always to have a not-for-profit look. So if we do that, I think it'll work out better next time. But that's the only explanation I can offer for what happened this time.
Just have a feeling that if CCRCs prosper, we all benefit. It helps to assure a high level of occupancy that clearly benefits the residents, and of course it benefits the providers. And I still think there's a challenge in the industry to get more people to understand what CCRCs are all about, and to clearly understand the advantages of affiliating with a CCRC. And that's something perhaps we can work together with Leading Age on.
Right.
I think that raises another question, and one of the things that I would suggest is that somebody, and I assume, Dan, that would be you, including your discussion of whatever plans we have for Boston, acknowledge the help that they gave us and appreciate the luncheon and so on. I would thank them for the participation and the involvement that they gave us. I don't want to be obsequious, and I don't want to, grovel at their feet, but they did make some nice concessions to us, and I think we ought to acknowledge that.
Yes, I certainly agree that Leading Age should get a letter from me thanking them for several very important contributions they made to us in connection with the Leading Age convention, and also anticipating a good consultation with them at the time of the peak convention in March. So I will definitely do that. Is there any other comments on Nashville before we move on?
Yeah, I'd like to just comment on Leading Age involvement. I've pointed out in the past that there was a time when Leading Age was one of the main presenters at NaCCRA meetings. And for some reason, Leading Age is no longer being a presenter. Instead we're having people other than people from Leading Age. Is that our idea? Or did Leading Age say that they no longer wanted to present, a program?
I certainly have no knowledge that Leading Age declined to present a program. I think the programs that have occurred have been the result of board members' suggestions, and they happen not to suggest a Leading Age person. So that's something to keep in mind as we plan for the future if we want to engage Leading Age again in our program.
I would like to, Marlene, and I would like to make a comment about that. When Susan Weiss left Leading Age, we lost a wonderful friend. The reason that Larry Minix is a life member is when she went to one of our meetings and realized he'd said he was going to join but never did, she wrote the check and she went back and told him, and he reimbursed her. She was our friend. She always made it a point to come to our meetings. We do not have that kind of friend at Leading Age anymore. And that's one of the reasons I very much favor, when we do the bylaws revision, that we reconsider having non-residents on the board. Susan Weiss could be a wonderful board member for us. She still cares about us. She's a life member.
Right, and she was in Nashville, and I met her for the first time. She was wonderful. I should say that my interaction with Sharon Sullivan has been very, very positive. Now, I don't know, Marlene, I didn't know Susan Weiss's role, so I can't compare Susan Weiss with Sharon Sullivan. But Sharon Sullivan also was very friendly and very helpful, and may be a future Susan Weiss. I don't know.
Susan Weiss was a vice president. Now we have this woman who's a doctor as the vice president for advocacy, and she has no interest in what we do.
Right. Okay. Friends, are we ready to move forward to the next agenda item on fundraising?
I move that the item on fundraising, which is agenda item 5, be referred to the executive committee.
Is there a second?
Second. Gene.
Any discussion before I call for a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent. Thank you, friends. Number 6. Developing NaCCRA presence in the state of Illinois and other states which lack a NaCCRA affiliated state association. I wonder if there is anyone, maybe it's you, Jack, coming. I'm worried that I myself am not really on top of a possible, how should I say, disparity which is occurring between Ohio and Illinois in terms of our treatment of them regarding dues. And I think this relates to this. Jack, am I right in asking you to speak to this?
Well, there has been correspondence. I'm not sure who else might have been. I think Bob Nicholson was involved also, between Mel Grossman and Jack Snyder. Jack Snyder is building an organization in Illinois, and Mel Grossman is building an organization in Ohio. And Jack Snyder was upset to learn after he had persuaded, I believe, 50 people to send checks to partners for individual memberships, learned that he was to come up with an additional $200 community dues and $500 state association dues, and that caused him consternation, which he voiced in Nashville. Since then, he and Mel have been in correspondence. Mel Grossman said, well, that requirement of those additional payments was so, he found it just inappropriate because he didn't see that there was any value to be obtained by paying a community association membership or a state association membership. So he just went ahead and formed a state association in Ohio, and he said, and I haven't confirmed this with Bennett's people, they just didn't pay the dues, and so that's where things now stand. And I don't know enough of the history as to why there are such things as community association dues, or why. I believe that originally the state associations were going to fund NaCCRA, and that was going to be the sole fund. So it may be the origin of it. It was an outgrowth of the associations that existed at that time. I know that here at our CCRC, we discussed it, to send in a check, recognizing that there wasn't any particular value, but we wanted to do the organization seemed to desire.
Jack,
John.
Okay, go ahead, John.
Okay. I think we should go. I think what Illinois has done is exactly the right thing, and what we need to tell Illinois is that they do not need to join as either a state association or a community association. But when the quote executive committee / bylaws committee, this is something we will have to address, and I believe we can address it in a way that I hope will satisfy everyone, particularly the board of NaCCRA. So I think it.
I would call our attention. Please, this is Marlene. I would call our attention to the fact that we have had a state which paid dues, then it came time to renew their dues, and they chose not to renew their state association membership. That was in New Jersey. Ultimately, they had a change in leadership, and when Ellen Handler came in, she brought their state association back into NaCCRA as a state association member. But we have had state associations which did not belong. state associations.
Yeah.
Okay. Judy, did you want to say something?
Yes, I want to say that that is, I think, one of the fundamental questions we have, that we have 13,000 members, not members, FLACRA members, but they are not NaCCRA members, and we have to resolve that problem. And what it seems that Illinois is doing it the other way around, we have to figure out some way of getting those 13,000 members into NaCCRA.
This is John again. Since I watched the tape of the discussion in Nashville, I think it was Walt Boyer who raised the question, and this is going to have to be discussed by the executive committee. The question: are we an association of members, or are we an association of associations? And Gene just basically spoke to that. And yes, we will have to discuss that, and we will have to bring it back to the full board and reach an agreement on that subject. But we can't do it on this phone call.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Joe Walton here. Where is
Joe, I have you online to speak, but I'd like to ask a question myself for clarification.
Okay.
Jack, do I understand that Jack Snyder, having gotten 50 members to join NaCCRA at $20 a head, now has no money to run local activity?
That's well, let me talk to that. First, I think John Dulcimer made a motion, and I'll second his motion. Okay, now, to your immediate question, that's what happened. What Mel Grossman did was to anticipate this challenge, and so he collected the dues, and then he charged more than NaCCRA's dues, and then he sent just a proportion in. Whereas Jack Snyder thought that he would have support from NaCCRA, so he relied fully on NaCCRA to support his development operation, and that's left him at sea. But I agree that it's complicated for us to resolve today. I think John Dulcimer's motion resolves the matter. We just say don't worry about it for now. We're going to consider in the executive committee, and I'll second that motion.
I guess the worry I have is if Jack Snyder is waiting for some resolution of a problem that will give him some money to operate with, can we afford the delay? That's all that's the question.
I suggested we contact Jack Snyder and tell him he does not need to be a community association or a state association, so he does not owe NaCCRA any money. And if he needs money to operate the Illinois, that, and a subtle way or a delicate way I put this, that is in effect his problem. But we can discuss that also. But we don't have the funds to support a state an association, a group of members in a particular state.
My question is, what is Jack's state of mind today with respect to NaCCRA? In a brief conversation I had with him in Nashville, he was displaying a lot of anger and criticism towards NaCCRA. And I wonder if he still holds that feeling towards our organization, or whether steps have been taken to put his mind at ease.
This is Jack Cumming. I spoke with him twice yesterday, so I probably have the most recent contact. He recognizes that we need NaCCRA. His initial impression was that it was somewhat dysfunctional.
Yes.
He now sees that there is the possibility that it can be rendered fully functional, and he accepts that there's a need for NaCCRA, although his primary interest is in Illinois, and he'd like to do it with NaCCRA. That's the basis on which he's begun. And I think with what we're talking about right now, he'll be happy to move in that direction under our umbrella instead of feeling that he has to find a new way of approaching it.
Okay. As treasurer, I'd be if people would be comfortable and somebody gives me a phone number, I'd be happy to call Jack Schneider and explain to him our finances, not in detail, but in general, and assure him that we welcome him and we welcome his input and we welcome the input of the people from Illinois.
I'll get you the info, John.
Okay. Thank you, Jack.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion before I ask for a vote?
Can I repeat the motion? I can't remember what it was.
John Dulcimer proposed that we reassure Jack Schneider and his chapter at Monarch Landing that we welcome them in NaCCRA. We're eager to support and work with them as they grow toward becoming a state association, and that we refer the general question that's been raised by this issue to the Executive Committee and the Bylaws Committee for further resolution.
Thank you.
Are people prepared to vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent. Okay, we're now up to item 7. Request by Brookdale Executive to address NaCCRA Board. Jack, just before I ask for general discussion or a motion, do you want to add anything to what is briefly said in the agenda?
Well, I can certainly. While we were in Nashville is the home office of Brookdale, actually technically someplace called Brentwood, but I gather they're in Nashville. And for those who don't know, Brookdale has 130,000 residents in total. They have 1,200 communities, of which some number are what they call entry fee communities, and those entry fee communities are organized in a particular division, the president of which is Chris Bird, who I met with while I was there. Most of our conversation had to do with how, with business matters, but at the end of our conversation, he had asked a little bit about NaCCRA, and I said that we met monthly by teleconference. At the end of our session, as we were shaking hands to depart, he said, if your group agrees, I would like to be able to address one of your board's teleconferences at an early date. And so I thought that was interesting. Then as I thought about it afterwards, I thought, good heavens, if there were, for example, 10,000 residents in this entry fee division, if they were to bring 10,000 residents into NaCCRA, that would change the character of NaCCRA. So we really need to consider the full implications of what would be involved with that, and that led me to raise with Charlie, because of his friendship with Larry Minix, would it be possible for Larry Minix to find provider organizations that are sufficiently willing to have resident empowerment that they might pay NaCCRA fees out of the resident fees, just as Brookdale seems to be thinking of doing, so that there could be a matching 10,000 from the not-for-profit side of this political divide. But that's neither here nor there. The immediate question is simply that we pursue this, and my suggestion was that Dan call Chris Bird, get an idea of what he's thinking of, and what he wants to share. And if Dan thinks, in his judgment as president, that what Bird wants to say to the board is something that we should hear, there's no harm in our listening to him, and that we would then go ahead with that.
Jack, are you making the motion that's under item 7?
Well, I guess I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Okay, there's a second. There's a motion. There's a second. Is there any more discussion before I ask for a vote?
I have a question. This Brookdale, is that the organization that got into a considerable financial trouble here some years back?
That's Erickson, I think, not Brookdale.
Hey, I don't know. I Googled Brookdale Senior Living, and they have a history there. They reported on the internet, and it made me curious as to what's prompting their desire to speak with us. Now I know a little bit more. I just a little uncertain about their background.
Joe, did you see anything on the internet that implied they were in financial trouble? Joe?
I'm sorry. Who are you addressing that question to?
Joe, it's Dan. I'm addressing to you. Did you see anything on your Googling of Brookdale that implied they were in financial trouble?
Yeah, I printed out. I looked under Brookdale Senior Living, financial trouble. By early 2005, the company had grown to approximately 90 standalone properties. During this time, Fortress Investments had acquired the recently bankrupt NaCCRA Corporation, formerly Alternative Living Services in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, a Milwaukee, Wisconsin-based company who had developed and opened more than 500 assisted living and memory care properties throughout the United States between 1993 and 2003. At one point, Alterra was the largest provider of assisted living and memory care services within the United States, catapulting ahead of the industry benchmark set for Sunrise Senior Living. Rapid growth proved costly and detrimental to Alterra Corporation, and it filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in 2004. They managed to sell off a third of their assets and bring their facility total down to approximately 300 properties and so on. Here's a key that, NaCCRA has been telling residents to make certain that people you're dealing with have a good, strong financial background and record. And maybe all of this is past history and it doesn't count anymore. I'm just suggesting that before we identify with Brookdale, that we be clear on what history is.
This is John. Brookdale owns several well-run properties in Florida, and even if conceivably they're in financial trouble, I assume Dan will talk to Chris Bird, and even if they are, we still could learn a great deal.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah.
So I don't think that is a negative on the motion, so I would call the question.
Well, before you call, I would like to respond because Joe's. This is we're not identifying Brookdale. There's a process any more than we identify with Sears Methodist Retirement Community in Texas, with whom we're working very closely. Okay. And so Brookdale is a publicly traded company. The fact is that the profitability involved in the senior housing industry has been very thin, and if you look at the return on investment of an investor in Brookdale over the years, it's quite low. And in fact, the cost of capital, when I looked into it, capital for the few not-for-profit organizations that I looked at was greater than what the profit was within Brookdale. So those are interesting questions. I think they're beyond this. I agree with John. I don't see any harm in the motion. I doubt that Joe does too, unless you. No. Even if they have problems in the past, that's no reason, not to sit down and talk with them and learn what we can from them. Best-run companies, through no fault of their own, sometimes get into financial trouble. So I'm just saying, we should be curious about all the backgrounds, but that should not be a showstopper. Well, then let's vote on it.
Are we ready to vote on the question? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, excellent.
And this is Marlene. I will have to leave the conference. I have another appointment. I did not expect it to be over an hour.
Thank you, Marlene.
Okay.
Thank you, Marlene. I guess, friends, we should be looking to determine. I believe we still have a quorum, but I think, friends, we probably should be looking toward adjournment. Let's just take a look at the agenda. We have the matter of the exploration of electronic means of meeting, past presidents and board meetings, and the collaboration between NaCCRA and Humana. I'm wondering if friends are willing to continue a little longer, perhaps another 10 minutes.
Dan, it's John Delsmer. If I can make a comment and then I'll make a motion, which I think will get item 9 out of the way, maybe or maybe not. As far as number 8 and a Skype capacity, Bennett told me today that Partners does have the facility to do that for the board if they would decide that's something they want to go forward with. That doesn't mean we need to, but it is there. And on item number 9, I would make a motion that past presidents of NaCCRA shall be considered as an honorary officer and be allowed to be present at all board meetings, including executive sessions of the board, and shall be permitted to speak, but past presidents shall not have a vote.
John, does that come in the bylaws?
It can be eventually placed in the bylaws.
Don't we have something in the bylaws now about past president?
But it doesn't really cover it. It does, but and I agree with you, Judy. It would have to be changed eventually. But I think if we make a motion at this meeting for future meetings, we could at least invite past presidents to. We'll let them know about this motion and at least invite them to speak. And you are correct; it would have to be eventually passed into the bylaws.
And can't we invite past presidents now without any formality, just an invitation?
Personally, I think.
John, let me please. May I interrupt? Firstly, I think that in terms of our teleconference meetings, I find that we already have too many people, and we're trying to cut down the board. So I hope that the resolution will focus on the face-to-face meetings and inviting them to the face-to-face meetings.
Okay, we certainly. I'm more than comfortable withdrawing the motion and saying once we have an executive committee meeting and we move forward on where we're going, that maybe makes it a more appropriate time to consider this. So I will take your comment in that view, and I've got to leave the meeting. I apologize, but I got to go join because I've got to make a report to them about NaCCRA, which is only going to be positive, and I hope will result in some good things, because I'm going to suggest to them that they affiliate some way in NaCCRA.
Okay.
John, thank you very much for sitting with us. I know you have another commitment, and that's really terrific.
Thank you.
Okay.
I could dispose of that item very quickly.
Okay. Friends, I think I need to just reassure myself that a quorum remains. So can I take a roll call again? Walt?
Yeah, here.
Jack? Jack, are you here?
Pardon?
Jack, are you here?
Yeah, I am here, and I'd like to speak when you get done. But I think if you have a quorum at the opening, you don't need to prove a quorum later.
Really?
Yes.
I think that's correct.
Okay, then I won't worry about it. Okay, Jack, you want to make a comment?
No, my feeling is item 8 is the concern about the number of people in the meeting. To answer Judy's question, although the bylaws are permissive of the immediate past president, they do not exclude people. Since there's no exclusion, can certainly be invited, but it is desirable to put in. Therefore, I interpreted that as being John Dulcimer really moving the two motions that were presented for 8 and 9, if I understood, and I was hoping he'd stay to confirm that he said he talked to Bennett. Well, the proposal here is to talk to him and try to work that out. Sounds like he was supportive of that and thought it would work. So I would, he didn't move, I'll move the motions for number 8 and number 9 as a package here. If there's a second, we could just get those out of the way and move on.
Thank you, Jack. Is there a second?
I'll second it, Gene.
Okay. Well, I think so you have a motion and second. Is there any discussion of motion of the matters covered in 8 or 9 before I ask for a vote?
Paragraph 9 has a conditional factor, and that is it's not effective until Skype is available. Right. I don't know that that's necessary. I mean, I assume that the past presidents have something to add, and it doesn't matter whether we're using Skype or conferencing or whatever else.
Okay, I agree. I accept the amendment to the motion. Do you accept it, Gene?
Yes.
Well, I would like to oppose the amendment. I'm trying to chair sensible meetings, and it's very difficult to chair sensible meetings over the telephone if I have no visual clues. So I would say until we get the Skype up and running, I would hope we would not enlarge the number of people who are participating in teleconferences.
One of the things that the executive committee is going to cover, and that is the size of the board.
I'm sorry, say that again, Pete.
I refer all this to the executive
committee is going to cover, and that is the size of the board. And
so, in other words,
to me as a nominating committee.
All right. So I'm a little confused now procedurally. Do I understand now that we want to refer the matter of past president to the executive committee?
I think we're saying that our intent is that the past presidents be treated with respect and invited to attend. That may be difficult, and so we're going to try to find a mechanical way of addressing the problem.
Okay. So
I think there's two separate issues. I'm confused by trying to combine them.
Okay, so let's deal with number 8 first. Number 8 is a proposal to explore with Bennett this matter of video conferencing, and John gave us a hint that Bennett is prepared to do this, but John didn't discuss cost. That's one of the aspects of the proposed motion. So I'd like to see, separating the two motions, I'd like to see if there is a motion to do, if someone would like to move that we approve motion number 8, that if someone wants to offer motion number 8 as it is printed in the agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
Okay. It's moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? If not,
I think
yes.
John, since John is the manager of the money, and he said money's not a problem, I think just go ahead and talk to Bennett. If you confirm that Bennett can do it, let's do it.
Let's find out how much it costs to do it.
Right.
So
yes.
John said he talked to Bennett, and he told us earlier that money is not a problem.
Well, now wait a second. John said we're not bankrupt, but it's quite possible that Bennett's estimate of the cost of doing what's in the motion number 8 might be too much. So I would like the chance to consider Bennett's estimate of the cost before we actually sign on the dotted line to contract to do this.
Well, there are two costs involved. One is the pilot project, and then the other, what it would be to go ahead full speed.
There also may be a cost of each individual participant. Do we all have Skype facilities?
In other words, the participants have to have laptops or computers which have cameras.
Right. Correct.
And that is not, if someone is using a very old computer, it might be a problem, but most computers that are reasonably new can have a camera attached, and most computers that are very new have the cameras built in automatically.
Well, this is Jack again. When I last checked, if you use WebEx, which I'm familiar with, the cost for unlimited for our purpose is $900 a year. Those people who have video link can go in by video, and then you have the visualization. Anyone with a computer may not be able to give the video feed if they don't have a camera, but they can raise their hand to be recognized. So the recognition capabilities for the moderator to control the meeting are included, and they can then phone in using a telephone, phone in just as we're doing now, and they talk into the phone, but they link through the computer to see the agenda and where things are.
That's terrific. Okay, so
can I ask you a question just for clarification? Is this conference call costing NaCCRA?
Yes.
We're paying for this?
Yes.
Okay, how much?
Very little.
Not $900 per year.
Okay.
I'm not this small lawyer. I don't know what NaCCRA is paying, but North Carolina is paying 9 cents per person per hour when we use teleconferences. So I imagine it's pretty close to that. Which means a conference like this may cost $70, $80, $90, something like that.
Yeah, that's my impression.
Okay. I believe, am I correct, that the motion that's printed in the agenda has been offered and seconded? Are we ready to take a vote? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the motion under agenda item 8 is passed. Now we come to the motion of agenda item 9. I think we've left this, that pending the realization of item number 8, we want to invite past presidents to participate in face-to-face meetings when item number 8 gets, finalized, and when the bylaws committee decides on the size of the board, we will consider inviting past presidents to attend electronic as well as face-to-face meetings. So I'm wondering if someone is prepared to move the resolution under item number 9 as it's printed in the agenda.
Well, Dan, your concern is the number of people on the board or at the conference call. That isn't a concern of mine. And I don't care if we have the same number we have now or 5 more. If somebody has a contribution to make to the discussion, I think it's worthwhile hearing. So I disagree with your setting as a condition precedent the existence of Skype or one of the other methods, and I would say no matter how we have our meeting, past presidents are invited to attend.
Well, I agree with that, Peter. I'm all in favor of that. Gene.
Okay, I take that as the motion.
Okay, so can someone restate the motion?
Motion is that past presidents be invited to participate in the board. They can speak but not vote.
Is there a second?
Second.
Hurley seconded.
Okay, and are friends ready to take a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
I assume you're opposed, Dan. Are you opposed?
Well, as the president, am I supposed to vote? I would oppose. I would vote against it if I'm allowed to vote, but I don't know if I'm allowed to vote except to break a tie.
I think you're allowed to vote. You have a full vote. I'm going to record you as opposed, unless you are uncomfortable with that.
No, don't. I am opposed, but don't record me as opposed. I'm not. I don't want to make the
Abstain.
past presidents feel I'm unfriendly to them.
I'm taking the position that the motion is an informal action, and that formally it will wait till we revise the bylaws.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the way it can be taken.
Okay, so I will not. I will vote in favor of a motion that's going to be held until we can discuss the bylaws.
No, I think the motion has passed. Judy is saying her interpretation of the motion is that that the bylaws committee has to take it into consideration.
But that informally, it's passed.
Okay, so
informally,
the motion
the president can invite anybody he wants to a board meeting as an informal action. And so the motion says informally he is inviting past presidents. That's fine. We will wait till the bylaws are revised to make it into a formal action as to exactly who gets invited when.
Along with all the other changes that the bylaws committee has to make.
Correct.
Okay, I think we've acted.
The other thing that I think we have to consider is that, Pete, I agree with you that we want all the wisdom we can get. But my experience in successful organizations is that past leaders are made emeritus on letterheads and are paid due honor, but that they take a very low profile so that there's no ambiguity about what the leadership of the organization is. If there's ambiguity about the leadership of the organization tends not to flourish. In addition, in our case, we have the peculiarity that we have two past presidents. We have three past presidents in view, but two who have exhibited what I think is fair to say is somewhat bizarre behavior. Jack Matheson has caused, I have not experienced this directly, but Jack Matheson has caused enormous grief among other board members for his approach to recruiting people to be joined, has embarrassed NaCCRA in his approach on that, and Jack Matheson, in my view, has continued to grind the axe of gun control in our meetings. So that is one factor which makes me pause about inviting past presidents. I have had no problem with Charles Pauke until recently, but his recent action of sending a message critical of me to people in Oregon when I'm about to try to do an advancement job for NaCCRA in other boards would be unheard of. It is totally bizarre behavior. So we have two past presidents who, by any standard that I am familiar with after having served on dozens and dozens of boards, are totally off the reservation. So that's the basis for my reservation about this this motion. However, I do not want to be recorded as being against the motion because I don't want to have two people in a meeting who think I am hostile to them on the basis of past minutes. So I just prefer that the motion be recorded as having been voted for with no dissent.
Okay, well, I think the motion was presented by Pete, seconded by Hurley, and passed by the board.
Okay. Now, I believe we have item 11 is the last thing.
I can cover that quickly. The proposal to Humana is in the hands of its senior network development people. They're quite busy. This is the middle of the enrollment season in the healthcare business. So I'm not expecting a response quickly from them, but I'll stay in touch with them and also keep checking on with Cigna from time to time. Even though that I will no longer be on the board, I'll keep the executive committee informed on any developments, and we'll go from there. I'm still a long shot. Cigna and some preliminary signals from Humana seem to be suggesting that they're concerned about the level of NaCCRA's uncertainty as to how much it really wants to grow in membership and how to get there. That casts a shadow on the prospects of this developing. But I will continue to pursue it. The only other issue here is, I think it was Judy or maybe Jean that suggested that a Florida association might be a more viable place to start a pilot program with 13,000 state members, and Cigna has indicated that they'd like to see a minimum of 5,000 to start up a program. Maybe something can be done there, but I'm going to leave that entirely in the hands of John or others who are close to the Florida situation.
Okay, I'd just like to comment that I suggested that the 13,000 members in Florida become NaCCRA members. And I think that is a tremendously important thing for NaCCRA. And I think that is something that the Bylaws Committee has to work on, and we can work it out.
Yeah, looking back, and I'm the first to acknowledge that I was less than enthusiastic about earlier proposals, and I still am, and that's largely driven by a feeling that we've kept the state associations largely out of it. If we go down that road, I know that even though it's an option to them, I would feel more comfortable about moving forward if more had been done or will be done to bring the state associations up to speed and get their input on all of this.
Well, that's why I think we need a bylaws change, and it's a very big job. Cannot be done on teleconference.
Yeah.
Okay. I sense that all we need is this kind of progress report at this point. Good. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Joe, for that. And we'll be following this in the future with your help. I think we're at adjournment, friends. Is there anything else which should come before us before we close the meeting? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move that the meeting adjourn.
Second? Is there a second?
Second, Walt Boyer.
Okay, fine. All in favor, and we'll adjourn.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, friends. Have a good afternoon. You take care.
The following